$9,600, down to the dollar, the exact number I needed. Not a round guess, not a rule I read on a blog somewhere and copied without checking it. The precise dollar amount for 6 months of my real expenses on a salary of $35,000 a year. And I built it, not by getting a raise, not by moving back in with my parents, not by some side hustle that magically took off and started paying my rent. I built it on the exact salary I already had, using 5 specific systems applied at the same time for 19 months straight. I'm going to walk you through every single dollar of it, including the math I got wrong the first time I tried. Before I do, I want to name the assumption that's probably already forming in your head right now, because I had the same one, that this only works if you're earning $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, that $35,000 doesn't leave enough margin to build a fund that size, that maybe 3 months is realistic on this income, but 6 months is a number reserved for people who make more than you do. I used to believe that too. I don't anymore. And by the end of this video, I don't think you will either. I remember exactly what it felt like before this fund existed. A check engine light would come on and my stomach would drop before I even pulled over. Not because I didn't know cars sometimes need repairs, because I knew that whatever the number turned out to be, I didn't have a real answer for it. I'd open my banking app and do quiet math in my head, moving bills around, wondering what I could delay another 2 weeks. That specific kind of low-grade dread, the one that shows up every time something ordinary goes wrong, is what this fund actually removes. Not the emergency itself, the dread that used to come standard and automatic with every single one of them. Let's start with why I even picked 6 months as the target. Because that number gets repeated constantly across every finance channel and almost nobody explains where it actually comes from, or whether it's the right number for someone at this specific income level. It also doesn't help that the ground has been shifting under everyone's budget at the same time. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that consumer prices rose 3.8% over the 12 months ending in April 2026, the largest annual increase in nearly 3 years, with gasoline prices up 28.4% over that same period. Grocery prices climbed 3.2%. When the cost of ordinary, unavoidable expenses keeps climbing under you, the emergency fund conversation stops being optional and starts being urgent, because the buffer you built last year is worth less in real terms than it was 12 months ago. Here's the honest, source data before I get into my own numbers. According to Bankrate's 2026 Emergency Savings Report, 47% of Americans could not cover a $1,000 emergency using savings alone. 59% said they'd need to borrow the money somehow, whether through a credit card, a loan, or family. 24% have no emergency savings at all, not a small cushion, zero. And 63% of people surveyed said they'd need roughly 6 months of expenses saved to actually feel secure about their finances. Only 27% of them have that much. That gap between what people already know they genuinely need and what they actually have sitting in a real account somewhere is the entire reason this video exists in the first place. There's a second number that made 6 months feel less like an aspirational suggestion and more like a requirement I couldn't ignore. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported the average duration of unemployment in the United States in early 2026 at 22.4 weeks. That works out to just over 5 months, and that's not the time it takes to find your dream job, or even a job that matches your old salary. That's the average time it takes to find any job at all. If you're carrying a 3-month emergency fund and you lose your job today, you run out of money before the average job search is even finished. At that point, you're not operating from a cushion anymore. You're operating from a countdown clock. And every financial decision you make gets worse the closer that clock gets to 0. 6 months isn't an ambitious stretch goal. It's the number that actually matches how long real disruptions tend to last. So, I stopped treating 6 months as a slogan I'd heard 100 times and turned it into an actual, specific dollar figure built around my own life. Here's exactly how I did that. My salary was $35,000 a year, paid as a single filer. Using 2026 federal tax brackets, federal income tax, and FICA alone on that income come out to roughly $539 a month in combined deductions, which leaves approximately $2,500 a month in actual take-home pay. I'm deliberately using a state with no income tax here to keep the math clean and easy. To follow your own state may take a bit more out of that number, and I genuinely encourage you to run your specific numbers rather than copying mine exactly. But $2,500 a month is close enough to build a real, usable plan around. Then I did the part almost everyone skips when they try to figure out their number. I wrote down my actual necessary monthly expenses, not my income, not a rough guess pulled from a budgeting app's default categories, the real, specific numbers. Rent was $850. Utilities came to $90. Groceries, kept intentionally lean, were $220. Transportation, including gas and car insurance combined, was $230. My phone plan was $35. Health insurance, since mine wasn't fully covered through an employer, was $175 a month. Added together, that's $1,600 a month in genuine non-negotiable necessities. 6 months of $1,600 is $9,600. That's the target, not my income times 6, which would have pushed the number well past $17,000 and made the entire project feel hopeless before I'd even started. My necessary expenses, the number that actually reflects what it costs to survive a real disruption, times 6, $9,600, and not a dollar more than that. Because artificially inflating the target only makes people quit in month 2. Out of my $2,500 in monthly take-home pay, after subtracting the $1,600 in essentials, I had $900 left over every single month. That $900 wasn't free money sitting around waiting to be spent. It was the raw material for this entire plan, and exactly how I chose to allocate it is what separated a fund that would have taken over 5 years from a fund that actually took under 2. If I had simply set aside a modest amount and parked it in a regular savings account without touching anything else, here's what that path looks like in real numbers. At $150 a month, sitting in a standard account paying the national average rate of roughly 0.41%, it takes 64 months to reach $9,600. That's 5 years and 4 months. It technically works, eventually, but almost nobody actually sticks with a plan that's slow for that long, and you remain financially exposed the entire time you're building it. So here's what I did differently, system by system, in the order I actually applied them. System 1. Before I saved a single additional dollar, I moved every dollar earmarked for this fund into a high-yield savings account. This is the cheapest, easiest decision in the entire plan, and it's the one most people skip entirely, because it doesn't feel like real progress. High-yield savings accounts were paying between 4.2 and 4.8% APY throughout 2026, compared to roughly 0.41% at a typical big bank savings account. On a $9,600 balance, that difference works out to about $432 a year in interest versus about $39 a year. Same underlying dollars, same FDIC insurance protection, same instant liquidity if an actual emergency happens. Just a different container earning roughly 10 times more for the effort of filling out one online application. System 2. I wrote down an explicit, specific definition of what counted as a legitimate withdrawal from this fund before I ever needed to make one. Car repair, medical bill, job loss, an essential home repair that can't wait, not a flash sale, not a spontaneous weekend trip, not a gift I felt guilty declining. Having that definition written down in advance meant I never had to negotiate with myself in the exact moment my willpower was weakest and rationalizing an exception felt easiest. System 3. I automated $355 a month, more than a third of that $900 in discretionary income, moving out of my checking account the same day my paycheck landed, before I could see it, spend it, or talk myself into Just this once. Automating it removed the decision from my hands entirely. I stopped mentally counting that money as spendable, which meant I never had to argue myself out of touching it. At $355 a month, sitting in the high-yield account and earning interest the whole time, the math alone gets you to the $9,600 target in about 26 months, just over 2 years, without pulling any other lever at all. System 4. I looked for one recurring expense I could realistically cut and redirected every dollar of the savings straight into the fund. I went through my phone plan, a streaming subscription I genuinely wasn't using anymore, and my car insurance. Switching my phone plan to a cheaper carrier saved $18 a month. Canceling the unused subscription saved $14 a month. A single phone call to my insurance provider, just asking directly what they could do to keep me as a customer, got my monthly premium reduced by $26, $58 total, found without changing my actual day-to-day life in any way that mattered. That pushed my automated contribution from $355 a month up to $413 a month, which alone compressed the timeline from 26 months down to 23 months. System 5. Every windfall that came in outside my regular paycheck went straight into the fund, with no exceptions. My tax refund, $900, went in during month 4. A short freelance writing project brought in $600 around month 10. Birthday and holiday money from family added another $300 by month 14. None of that money touched my checking account first. None of it got treated as bonus spending money or used to justify a purchase I'd been putting off. It went directly into the high-yield account within days of arriving. Combine all 5 systems together, and here's what actually happened. In real time, $413 a month, automated, sitting in a high-yield account, earning interest continuously, plus $1,800 in windfalls, landing at 3 specific points along the way. I crossed the finish line at $9,995 in 19 months. Not 5 years and 4 months. Not even the 23 months the automation and bill negotiation alone would have taken. 19 months on a $35,000 salary, without a raise, and without taking on a second job. Now let me show you why this actually matters beyond a bank balance. Because a number on a screen doesn't fully capture what's at stake here. About a year before I started building this fund, my car needed a transmission repair that came to $2,400. I didn't have it sitting anywhere. I put the entire repair on a store credit card carrying 27.99% APR, and I paid $80 a month toward it, which felt manageable in the moment. Here's what that single decision actually cost me. 53 months to pay it off completely. That's 4.5 years. $1,774 in interest alone. Total amount paid, $4,174 for a $2,400 emergency. That one decision, made only because I didn't have a fund yet, cost nearly as much in pure interest as the entire 6-month emergency fund I eventually built from scratch. I'm not telling you this part to embarrass myself. I'm telling you because that repair happened barely a year before I finished the fund, and it's the clearest proof I have that the gap between those 2 versions of my financial life wasn't income, willpower, or luck. It was simply whether a specific system existed yet. This isn't a rare or unusual mistake, and it isn't just a credit card problem anymore. LendingTree's 2026 Buy Now, Pay Later tracker found that 47% of Americans have used a BNPL service, and 47% of those users have paid late on at least one of those loans within the past year, up 6 percentage points from the year before. Separately, Consumer Edge's most recent transaction data shows BNPL adoption is growing fastest, specifically among households earning under $40,000 a year. That's not a coincidence, and it's not really about convenience shopping anymore. That's what happens structurally when there's no fund in place and a real emergency shows up anyway. The debt doesn't replace the fund you didn't build. It becomes the exact reason you need one even more urgently than before. I know some of you are already listing, In real time, every way your numbers are different from mine. Your rent isn't $850, it's $1,400. You've got a student loan payment I never had to factor into this plan. You're supporting a parent? Or a kid? Or you live in a city where $35,000 stretches noticeably less far than it does in the numbers I used. That's real, and I'm not waving any of it away or pretending your situation is identical to mine. If you're carrying a student loan payment I didn't have in this model, the honest adjustment is simple. Even if it isn't easy, your discretionary number shrinks, so your System 3 contribution shrinks with it, and the timeline stretches. That's not a flaw in the plan. That's the plan correctly reflecting your actual life instead of mine. If you're supporting a parent or a child on this income, your essential expenses number is legitimately higher than $1,600, which means your 6-month target is legitimately higher than $9,600, and that's fine too, because the target is supposed to reflect your real number, not a number borrowed from someone else's spreadsheet. And if you live somewhere $35,000 simply buys less house and less groceries than it buys here, the honest move is to run your own essential expenses list line by line, the same way I ran mine, instead of assuming my numbers are a universal template. But here's what I want you to actually notice underneath all of that. None of these 5 systems require a specific income level to function. They require a specific behavior repeated consistently. Opening a high-yield account is free, at any income level. Writing down a definition is free. Automating whatever amount you genuinely have available, even if it's small, is free. Finding one recurring bill to cut is possible on almost any realistic budget. Directing windfalls into the fund instead of spending them is available to literally anyone who ever receives one. If your version of System 3 is $150 a month, instead of $413, the timeline simply gets longer. The destination doesn't change at all. Long is not the same thing as impossible. Long means you start today and arrive later than you'd prefer. Impossible means you never start in the first place, and that's the only outcome these 5 systems are actually designed to prevent. Let me put every single number from this video in one place so you can compare them directly against your own life afterward. Take-home pay, $2,500 a month. Essential expenses, $1,600 a month. 6-month target, $9,600. Baseline pace with no systems applied at all, 64 months. With automation alone, 26 months, compressed down to 23 months. Once the bill negotiation kicked in, actual real-world time, with all 5 systems and windfalls combined, 19 months, ending at a final balance of $9,995, and the true cost of not having this fund a year earlier, $4,174, just to pay off a single $2,400 emergency that a fund would have absorbed instantly and for free. That's the entire video, distilled down. A specific target instead of a vague borrowed rule. A specific account instead of whichever one you already happen to have open. A specific automated number instead of whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month. One bill, renegotiated with a single phone call, and a strict rule about windfalls that doesn't bend under pressure, no matter how tempting the exception feels in the moment. 19 months isn't fast in the way people usually want fast to feel. It's not a hack, and it's not a shortcut anyone is selling you. It's a decision made once, automated immediately, and then left alone to compound quietly in the background. The version of me who financed that transmission repair at 27.99% interest, and the version of me who finished building this fund 19 months later, are the exact same person, on the exact same salary, in the exact same city. The only thing that actually changed between those 2 versions of me was the decision to start, and the systems that made starting easy enough to actually stick with. I want to be honest about something else too. 19 months is not a promise. It's what happened for me, on my salary, in my specific circumstances, with those exact windfalls landing when they did. Yours might take longer. It might, with a bit of luck, take less time. What doesn't change Is the mechanism underneath it a real target, a better account, an automated number, one negotiated bill, and a rule about windfalls that holds even when it's inconvenient? That mechanism works regardless of the exact month it finishes on. And that's the part actually worth copying, not the specific timeline. If any part of this landed for you the way it landed for me, open the high-yield account tonight, before you go to bed. Not next month. Not after your next paycheck clears. Not once things feel a little more settled. Tonight, transfer whatever amount you genuinely can, even if that number is $20. The account existing at all is the entire first step, and every other system in this video only starts working after that one is already done. If this was useful to you, hit subscribe. Every single week, I break down exactly how the real numbers work, in exact dollars, on real salaries, not vague motivational advice dressed up as a financial plan. The actual math, laid out completely and sourced honestly, so you can go build your own version of this, starting from whatever you're currently earning right now, on whatever timeline actually fits your real life.